Sezno. I'm gonna try to put this succinctly. This is not a roast of Jacob Collier, okay? There's many other videos you can find if that's what you're craving. There's a lot about him that I really respect, but he's not the Mozart of Gen Z. And it's strange to me that enough people have said this that it's like part of the discourse around him. When one compares him to Mozart, what do they mean by that? Like, what aspect of Mozart? His work, his character, his life, his legacy? And I ask that because that comparison to Mozart, it inherently picks and chooses. And you're asking for trouble there. And to be honest, I think it shows a very shallow understanding of Mozart especially, but also of Jacob Collier. Like, when people say that, I think it actually does a disservice to Jacob Collier. It brings him like attention and criticism that I don't know if he wants. To answer that earlier question of like, what aspect of Mozart are people even referring to? I think it's this legacy that Mozart has left in people's minds where they imagine him as a freak genius. In the first place, like, that is vague as fuck and like hard to define, but let's just say like his extraordinary intuitive musical mind, exemplified by shit like him being a child prodigy and like writing symphonies at age 5, and Amadeus depicting how he had the music all composed in his head and he could write it down without corrections. Shit like that leads people to say like, oh, he's a freak genius. To me, this is the only aspect of similarity that exists between Mozart and Jacob Collier. Mr. Collier is clearly an extraordinary musical mind. The demonstrations he does, his skill on numerous instruments, modulating to G, half sharp, major, like, you know what I'm talking about here. He does have musical skill and intuition that is exponentially beyond that of the average musician. And many would and do call him a freak genius. But the comparison to Mozart, it stops there. Jacob Collier is not comparable to Mozart in terms of his wider cultural impact, the recognizability of his work, and so far his contribution to music history, like musical form and musical style. It is hard to compare a living artist with somebody who died in 1791. But we today, we've all heard of Mozart, and it's not just because he was a freak genius. There are prodigies in every period of history. And we could say that Jacob Collier is one of them from this period of history. But history doesn't care about a freak genius just because. Would Jacob Collier be remembered 250 years from now? It takes more than just being a genius to do that. When people say that he's the Mozart of Gen Z, it's such a sports fan's view of musical skill. They think to themselves like, well, clearly nobody else is on the level of this guy. But like, art is obviously not the same thing as like, who hit the most home runs. It's sort of similar to like, you know, Isaac Newton and Einstein are like thought of as freak geniuses of science. It's like, yeah, sure, but their legacies are way bigger than that. We remember them specifically because of what they contributed. Mozart was a child prodigy who grew up to far outdo his potential as an adult composer, and that's why we all know about him. He wrote an absurd amount of music that has stood the test of time. Every single person watching this would recognize at least one Mozart melody, and you might not even know that he wrote it. He's everywhere, still. Like, Mozart was a cultural force. Like, he was one of the supreme entertainers of his day. Like, it was a big deal when Don Giovanni dropped, you know what I mean? Like, the history of Western music in that era is impossible to consider completely and properly without talking about Mozart. And arguably everything that happened after him is not explainable without him. Explicable? Whatever. Like, respectfully, you could take Jacob Collier out of history and music today would be the same. To his credit, he is versatile and he explores like a lot of different styles in what he does. But is there a genre today that wouldn't be the same without Jacob Collier? He doesn't have the same kind of influence. But really, like, with the death of the monoculture and the internet and like just like where we are in history, I think that would be the case with anybody from today. I don't think any individual could be on that level today. Like, Mozart's contribution to history, to me, is way more important than just like, he was a genius. I ought to bring up that Mozart was dead at 35 and Jacob Collier turns 32 this year. Again, I don't mean any of this as an insult to Jacob Collier. Like, what do I know, you know? But like, why do I doubt that he even wants to be called the Mozart of Gen Z? It appears to me that he's aligned himself differently from other artists. Like, is he trying to be a discography type artist the same way other pop musicians are? I don't think so. He has his own space in music. He has his own thing and he's great at it. And it's to his credit. He's totally winning. Nobody can take that away from him. But he's an anomaly, really, because we all know that he's really good at music. But did we learn that from hearing his songs? Or did we learn that from his video with Herbie Hancock, among others? I think Jacob Collier is tremendous as an educator and a performer. And the musical world is better off with him in it. And let's be totally honest, like, we can't say that about everyone. But he's not the Wolfgang Amadeus of today. I hope that doesn't sound too ranty or negative, but it's all love, you know? Just one guy's opinion. All love and respect. Much love to you all.